Hello to Madeline and Noam, and thank you for supplying this very interesting game for us to take a look at. So, Madeline has white, and as I've been seeing time and time again in these Sunday class games, we've got another four knights. It's everywhere, I tells you, everywhere. So, Madeline went for the Spanish four knights, which I've discussed in earlier videos, and including the Winter Capablanca game, for one. So here, black has three main moves, as I've mentioned before. So there's bishop to b4, the symmetrical line that Capablanca played. There's Rubinstein's knight to d4, and then there's the funny-looking bishop to d6. And I've talked about these moves before, but black played a6. Now, I can understand why you would play a6. It looks a lot like a Ruy Lopez, like a regular Ruy Lopez. And really, it has transposed into a sort of Ruy Lopez. For instance, if white were to have played the Ruy Lopez and black played the Berlin, then knight to c3, there we are. It's the same position. But back to the game. Yeah, a6 is a little bit inferior to the three main moves, though it's not that bad. So here's the thing: takes, 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 and this is what happened in the game. Now, in the regular Ruy Lopez, where black plays a6 and white tries to win the pawn directly, it's not a big deal because of queen to d4, and in fact black is maybe even a smidgen better in this position. So the knight moves away, usually to f3, you take the pawn, and black is a little bit better because white's going to lose castling privileges and black has the bishop pair. But in this version, in the game, after bishop c6, dc6, knight e5, here of course queen to d4 would make no sense because white just plays knight to f3 and black cannot take the pawn on e4. White's probably just winning here. But what black can do is play knight takes e4. Take the knight, and now queen to d4 with a good old-fashioned double attack. Now, white can castle, and if black were to play queen takes e4, well, this would be really bad because rook to e1, we've got a lineup with not just the queen, but with the king, and so when the queen moves away, then knight to g6 and knight takes h8, if nothing else. But black doesn't have to take the knight on e4. Instead, black can and should take the knight on e5. And after rook to e1, black can block the e file with bishop to e6. And even though it looks suspicious with the rook and the queen opposite each other with just the knight in between, there's actually nowhere for the knight to go that will do any damage. So white is probably a little bit better here because, well, mainly because she's going to have a little bit of an advantage in development, a little bit of a time advantage in chess, because the queen is going to have to run away and be a little bit inconvenienced. But as far as having some payoff, there doesn't really seem to be anything special here. So that is what black could have done. After bishop to e6, yeah, now white's just a good pawn up for nothing. d3 might be the best way of just cementing that, keeping that extra pawn nice and secure, and then playing for d4 later after you finish developing. So d4 is not so bad, but black has more ways of trying to take cracks at the center. So for instance, bishop to b4, we've already got a little pressure against this guy. Okay, let's go on. Bishop to d6, castles, queen e7, bishop f4, and black castle. Then there are some other things I would have liked to say on the way, but this is, I think, a really critical moment in the game. So at this point, white played the move d5, and there's something I like about this move, but on balance, I think it's more dangerous than helpful. The thing is, it destabilizes white in two ways. Now, I know it's kind of an advanced idea, this destabilizing business. But one way is, again, we've got this lineup here, right? So the black rook opposite the white queen. And so anything that kind of clears the d file is going to be more dangerous for white than for black. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but you got to be really careful to make sure that there's not going to be any bad punchline that boomerangs against you. The other thing is that it also destabilizes the knight because, okay, it's attacked once, it's defended once. I mean, once white plays d5. But then you also have the queen on the same line as the knight as well. So again, there's more chance for something to go wrong in this situation. So instead of that, white had kind of a cool move. A little bit of a fork trick, really. So knight takes c6, I like the best. Attacking the queen and the rook, so you got to take the knight. And now e5, and you pick up your piece again. And white's going to remain with an extra pawn. But in the meantime, we've also kind of wrecked the black pawn structure in front of the king. So this would be really helpful, I think, to white's cause. All right, in the game, white played d5, takes, 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 and now a serious error here. And again, it's one of these things where you just have to be really careful and count out all the captures or calculate all the captures. Sometimes that can be tough and confusing, but there are positions where it just needs to be done. One trick that I've used sometimes when it's kind of complicated and there are a lot of captures is I'll just kind of mentally keep track of the material count. So right now, white's up a pawn, so I would calculate, let's say, +1. All right, the move in the game was bishop takes d5. So now it's equal. Let's say I'm calculating all of this. And then I'm looking at bishop takes f6, right? So, okay, +3 for white, queen f6, it's even, knight takes d5, +3. All right, this is great. So this works out. And now the only question is, can white keep this knight? And it turns out that, yes, you can. So queen at g5, attacking the knight a second time, and it's pinned, but we have c4. Okay, black goes c6. And now, do we have any safe checks? Because the knight can't otherwise move. And we do. Knight to b6 check, king to c7. Okay, the rook attacks the queen, the king attacks the knight. Is there some way to save both pieces? Turns out there is. Queen to b3. Now, you can attack the knight one more time, and it's almost trapped, but almost trapped is not trapped. The knight can go to a4, and it runs away, and white is up a piece. So it's a long calculation if you go all the way to the very end, but it is possible. I mean, that might be really challenging, but I think we can at least get to bishop f6, queen f6, knight d5, and realize that, hey, I'm up a piece, and the burden is now on black to prove that he can get it back. If he can't, I win. And if he can, that's okay. It's still equal. So in the game, after bishop takes d5, it was just knight takes d5, queen e5. And here, white's not up a piece, but is still in a pin. So white was able to get out kind of the same way, c4, c6, knight b6, king c7, queen b3. So basically the same thing, except here, white doesn't have the extra piece that she had in this position, right? So here, black doesn't have any minor pieces. In the game version, he does. He still has his knight. So that would be, I guess, the third important lesson, right? Or it's just a reminder, really, that when you're calculating variations like this, that you need to calculate all of the captures. So maybe black can only looked at knight takes d5, which was the move played in the game, instead of working out bishop takes f6. So in this position, black should have played knight takes d5, and then everything is fine. So material is equal, and the position is roughly equal. Yeah, both sides, you have opposite color bishops, which can potentially give both sides some extra attacking chances in a middle game situation. All right, so a very interesting game. Actually, generally really well played, too. So it would be nice to spend more time on the game, but time is short. So again, kind of a reminder that in the Spanish Four Knights, you generally don't want to play a6, although even this is not so bad, provided that black plays knight takes e4. So that's the first point. Second point was just to watch out for destabilizing moves like d5, right? So here the knight on e5 is really secure, although I like knight takes c6, which just gets rid of the knight. But if you don't do that, let's say you play a move like queen to e2, the knight is really secure. Whereas after d5, now you have to worry about your queen a little bit. You've got to worry about that knight. Things are much less secure. And then again, the third point was just to be really careful that you calculate all of the captures. That is critical, and it helps you to avoid nasty surprises that can arise, like this again, little in-between move with bishop takes f6 before taking the bishop on d5. All right, thanks again. Very interesting game. Look forward to the next ones, and I'll hopefully talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.